But I come to the floor this morning just for a few moments to pay tribute to one of my great friends and one of my great colleagues, Dan Inouye, who passed away yesterday. I think back what it must have meant to him as he witnessed Pearl Harbor at the age of 20. He said that he realized at the time that the pilots in those planes that were bombing his family and others in Hawaii were people of the same ancestry as his father. And it hurt him. It hurt him as well to be branded as suspect because of his Japanese origin, and to see literally tens of thousands of Japanese Americans interned in camps because their loyalty was questioned. He took the opportunity to volunteer and serve our nation to prove that he was willing to risk his life for America, to prove his loyalty. He served in one of the most highly decorated units in all of World War II, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which was comprised of Japanese Americans, and they fought in the European theater. They recently came to Washington to be honored, and Senator Inouye was there. It was a great moment to see these men of the greatest generation who had proven to America their love for this country, none more so than Dan Inouye. When you look back on his life, there were so many aspects of it that were just historic in nature. You would never know it in conversations with him or working with him. And I visited Senator Inouye's office, and it was unusual by Senate standards. I looked all across, there wasn't a picture of Danny Inouye on the wall. There were no awards for this man who had served more than half a century in Congress. And I said to him, it's interesting, your office has a lot of artwork and photos, but nothing about Danny Inouye. No, he said, I didn't want to put those things up. He said, I wanted everyone to feel at ease coming in here. I didn't want to talk about my party affiliation or anything I'd done. I wanted them to feel comfortable and to know that this was a welcoming office. That's the kind of person he was. Time and again, he proved it. He started off in the Territorial House of Representatives in Hawaii, and when Hawaii became a state, he served in Congress and later in the United States Senate. He was there from the beginning, and what a dynamic leader he was for his state of Hawaii. He did so many great things over the years. He talked about his experience as a sniper and how he still had in his mind the images of those enemy soldiers that he shot down. He couldn't even 50, 60 years later get those images from his mind. He talked about befriending one of his fellow veterans, disabled veterans, who was in the Michigan Veterans Hospital. He told me this great story that he shared at that prayer breakfast about how as an officer he would spend his weekends in the great city of Chicago at the Knickerbocker Hotel, he said. That was the hotel for officers. And he said, I'd come into Chicago and have a great time on the weekends and head back to the Veterans Hospital. Well, he finally talked one of his fellow Hawaiians, a man whose face had literally been burned off, to join him in one of these trips to Chicago. The man was embarrassed at his appearance and didn't think anyone would want to be around him or talk to him. But Danny Inouye made sure that when he came to Chicago, he prepared all of these different places to stop, and every one of them greeted Senator Inouye and his friend in a warm fashion. The story goes on from there, and I won't go into the details, but he was a man who always was looking to help someone else. He told how this man who had been so brutally injured in the war returned to Hawaii and raised a family and was Dan Inouye's friend for life, as so many of us were. I think back as well about Senator Robert C. Byrd's funeral in West Virginia. Mr. President, it was one of the hottest days I can remember. We were up there just baking in the sun at this memorial service for Robert C. Byrd, and I'd intentionally picked a seat right next to Danny Inouye. I was just take off my coat, I was mopping the perspiration off, and I looked at him in his dark suit without a bead of sweat. I said, how do you do this? Well, he says, you know, the Asian religions are very important in my life, and they believe that mind over matter can achieve great things. And I can visualize myself sitting in a deep freeze now. I'm not hot at all. And I thought, this man is amazing in so many different ways, what he's done with his life. And those stories, some serious, some lighthearted, just reflect so well on this man and what he meant. Mr. President, One of the most important things I have on my agenda is the passage of the DREAM Act. I've worked on it for 11 years. And there was a time on the floor of the Senate, September 21st, 2010, when I couldn't break the Republican filibuster on the DREAM Act. And I was pretty despondent over it. Senator Reid came to the floor and said a few kind words about my efforts. But then, out of nowhere, Senator Inouye sought recognition. He knew that I was trying to get for millions of these young people living in America a chance to serve their nation and prove their love and become legal in America, become citizens in America. And he took to the floor, and I want to read what he said because it touched me. He said, "Madam President, I wish to step back in history, if I may. On December 7th, 1941, something terrible happened in Hawaii. Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese. 3 weeks later, the government of the United States declared that all Japanese Americans, citizens born in the United States or of Japanese ancestry, were to be considered enemy aliens. As a result, like these undocumented people, they could not put on the uniform of this land." Senator Inouye went on to say, "Well, I was 17 at the time, and naturally I resented this because I loved my country and I wanted to put on a uniform to show where my heart stood. But we were denied, so we petitioned the government. A year later they said, okay, if you wish to volunteer, go ahead." Senator Inouye said, "Well, to make a long story short, the regiment I served in, made up of Japanese Americans, had the highest casualties in Europe and the most decorated in the history of the United States." And then he turned and said, "I think the beneficiaries of the senator from Illinois and the DREAM Act will do the same." It was the type of short statement which captured in a few words his life, his sacrifice, what he had proven by risking his life for this country. It's a reason we honor him for this morning. His last word, aloha, as Senator Reid said, so appropriate that this kind and gentle American hero would leave with a greeting of love for everyone else. That was his life.